Steve and I have a 2000 Honda Accord in the shop, and we're getting ready to do a set of front and rear pads on it. So if you just need some brake pads on your Honda Accord that's around this year, we'll show you what's involved with replacing the brake pads on it. Before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and subscribe to all of our notifications. That way you'll get a heads up when we upload a new video.
We're getting ready to do the brake pads on the 2000 Honda Accord, and we got a 17 millimeter on our ratchet. We're going to remove the caliper and depress the piston, and then we're going to remove the pads. We may remove the bar, we may not. Let's see how the pads come off on this thing. They're a little tight. I'm going to lube up the caliper pins over here when we get the caliper off and depressed, and then we'll get our new brake pads installed. Okay, we got a rubber boot on the bottom right here, and that came off the bottom caliper pin, so we're going to make sure that we put them back in the same way. Let's get a little pry bar and pry the caliper off. Now we're going to try and collapse the piston right now with the pry bar inside here before we take it right off. And sometimes you can cheat and get the caliper to, you can close. I'm gonna have to get a smaller screwdriver to get in there. No, actually I can get in there with this. Now we're collapsing the piston and using the brake pads as our leverage. Some more to go. This bar is a little bigger than I need, but I think we're pretty close to the bottom. I may push it in a little bit more with some clamp vice grips. You could just work it with a smaller bar, you could get that out, or you could pry the pad off. Now the pads, what we see a lot is the pads are frozen in here now on the bars. So you get rust that builds up in here, and then it seizes the brake pads. So like this inner brake pad, this thing ain't really doing anything for you because it's just frozen solid. So we're gonna remove the brake bar, and then we're gonna free this all up on the caliper, and we're gonna run a file across these 2 points over here so that we can get the new brake pads when they go on here. You should be able to move the brake pad back and forth. This brake pad, I mean, I'm trying to hit it off right now. That thing is just frozen, so this is really not, it's giving you a false sense of security that you have good brakes. So we're gonna get the bar in here, the breaker bar, and take this off. So we got a 17 millimeter on. We're not break a bar. I'm gonna crack these loose. So we're going to bring this caliper bracket over to the bench, and we're going to show you how these brake pads are just frozen in there. This is the inboard pad here, and this is the one, you know, we're trying to get this thing to move, and it just ain't moving. The outboard pad had a little movement to it, Okay, this inboard pad where the caliper pin is hitting it, this thing is just frozen in there. So it's doing nothing. So we have new clips with our kit. So we're going to remove our clips, and these clips are the same ones for each side. And we're going to put this in a vise, and we're going to run a file across this to get the rust out from here. And then we have to take our new brake pads, and we're going to try and dry fit these in here after we lube them, and then make sure that these things should slide in and out with your new clips. There's no way that they should be frozen. So that's where we're at with this thing right now. So let's run the file across here lightly. We're going to lubricate our boots, and then we'll put our caliper pins back in here. Sometimes someone did something here. Looks like that's a little never sees residue in there. So the pins weren't frozen, but let's just run a file across this. So we have a small file here, and these don't seem too bad, but we want to run the file across just to get all the rust out of there. And this should all be lubed up with, we use the synthetic caliper pin lube. We're going to lube that all up. And as long as we're going flat, these things should get a little shiny and clean. On the Chevys, you see a lot of rust buildup on the pickup trucks, and you really have to work these on the pickup trucks a lot more, I've noticed. So we're going to do this on the other side. It's going to be the same procedure. And sometimes there's a lot of rust buildup, and you'll be just shaving it off right now. All right, now that feels smooth. Everything's clean here. So we're gonna get our clip set in there and then lubricate everything, and then get our brake pads on and make sure they slide. So we got our clips. We're gonna install them in, get them so that they lock in place. We ran a file across this side too a little bit. This helps the clip sit on. So we're just going to center our clips and then bang them down at the place. Okay, so these are all in place. Now we're going to take our brake pad, and we want to try and dry fit this to make sure it's going to run in here smooth. Okay, so we get that in, and it's sliding so we can move it. Now we're going to put the lube in there. You just want to make sure that that's good. So we're going to load these up and with the caliper pin lube, and then get the pads loaded into them. Okay, get that side in. This is not always an easy part of the process here. Okay, that one in. All right, we're gonna slip this back on the vehicle and we're gonna load up our caliper pins with lube. All right, we're gonna slip our pad assembly back onto the rotor. Okay, now, I never seized up my bolts already. Catch these. All right, those are tight. Now, I'm not sure if I had depressed my caliper enough because we said the piston was sticking out a little bit. Let's see if it'll fit on. And it will fit on, but it's a little tight. So I'm gonna use the vice grips and depress that a little bit more. I'll show you that. You can use a C-clamp or whatever you have. If I had a smaller pry bar when I was in there, I would have depressed it a little more. You see the piston rolling in now. Now it's completely at its bottom. So we're gonna put some never seize on this lube right here and around the boot to keep it moist. And then we're gonna bolt that back on. Now I have 2 caliper pins. We're gonna load those up with caliper pin lube. I'm just trying to keep these boots lubricated so that they don't dry out. You know, it's in your best interest. So, and whether you use the caliper pin lube or never seize, as long as there's something on there protecting that boot, then that's what you want. And we're gonna get one of these caliper pins all lubed up right now. And remember, we had the bottom one had the boot on it, the rubber boot, and we'll do this one first. Lube that up. Any extra, we can just stick it inside the boot, you know. Caliper's gonna slide right on. Slide the rubber boots back to get them on. This one's gonna go right through. Guide your way into the boot. Now we packed it with grease, so it's trying to push out, which is good. Let's get the other one lubed up. Line up the rubber boot. It's gonna go through it. You hear it all squishing in there. Now you gotta make sure you catch these straight. Now this one doesn't seem like it wanted to catch right there. So we gotta make sure that we catch these straight. Let's try and catch the bottom one, see if that one works out better for us. Okay, bottom one is, and sometimes when this bottoms out, this will kick the caliper in a certain way, and then it'll make it a little easier for you to catch the second one if you're having problems with one of them. So let's see, we'll back this off just a whisker. Okay, and now let's go after this one again. Yeah, so now this one caught nice and easy. It was catching a little off, so it was binding. You don't want to force it. We'll get these snug, and that'll do it. So we got our caliper pins lube. We'll show you how to lube tin clips and the slides to make sure your brake pad's gonna move back and forth. Make sure you don't get any grime on your brake pads. If you do, you can just sand them a little bit and get the material off so it's just scuffed. And that was it. Normally you change rotors. This customer never hits the highway, and they elected to just do the brake pads, so that's what we're going with. So caliper collapsed good, the brake pads are good on it, replace, everything's lubed up, so our brakes are gonna be good. So we did the same procedure on the driver's side, and that wraps up the front of this.